An hour wind would be a Category 2 hurricane. Helene is forecast to reach Category 4 status before making landfall. Jim Ryan,
All right, good morning and welcome to the WSJM video live stream. It is Thursday, the 26th day of September. Hard to believe how fast this month, this year, this decade is flying by. But good morning. I'm Ken Lundberg, and my special guest this morning is State Representative Joey Andrews. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
It's what's happening? Well, let's see. We've got the morning show. We have big news on Cook Nuclear Power Plant and that tax settlement that they came to with the local municipalities there. We'll be asking you about that because I think you're working on legislation that could help Bridgman Public Schools get around some of the millage stuff.
That's right.
So we'll ask you a little bit about that. But what have you been doing this week?
Well, we had session yesterday.
Yeah, you were over in Lansing.
Yep. Yeah, we had a whole series of votes yesterday. So big day.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, there's this whole thing coming up. I don't know if anybody's aware, but there's an election.
So, there is an election. There's an election. What are you thinking about November 5th?
This is probably the craziest election cycle I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic right now. I think at least on our end, things look really good. I like what I'm seeing in the polls for Harris, so I'm hopeful. But we know it can happen, right? We all lived through 2016, so I don't think any of us are taking anything for granted.
Well, I think you're right on that. I mean, it's been a wild year, and I mean, especially in the Democrat Party, when you're thinking about what you were thinking about in January is certainly not what you're thinking about in August, September, October, November, with the president stepping aside, Kamala Harris coming in. Do you feel, and we only have like a minute and a half here, but before I have to do news, but do you feel like there should have been a more robust process in selecting a Democrat nominee?
I mean, of course, I think that would have been everybody's preference.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it speaks a lot to Biden's character ultimately that, he did what was best for the country, stepping aside. I mean, we all saw that debate, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, of course, a better process would be, preferred, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they had the convention set up right there. It was just do it at the convention. We all love reality TV.
Sure.
No.
Sure.
Okay, maybe not. All right, the political parties won out on that one. So we'll talk a little bit more about some things that are happening in Lansing, and we'll talk about Joey Andrews, State Representative Joey Andrews, and some of the things that he's been working on. We'll get his background. If you don't know State Representative Joey Andrews too well, we'll give him an opportunity to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background. That's coming up right here on the WSJM Morning Show. We also give behind-the-scenes exclusive content for what folks are up to, or for what we're up to while we're doing the interview. And right now, I'm just messing around with my log here, my commercial log, to make sure that we can fit everything in. And we'll have that interview in just a moment with right after news on WSJM.
Also recalled. That's ABC's Andrea Fuji. Boar's Head is now facing several lawsuits. And some really, really old cheese found in China. Archaeologists found chunks of cheese laid out like a necklace with a mummy that was buried more than 1,000 years ago. The cheese, well preserved by the dry conditions. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
For not valid in all states or where prohibited by law. Loans are subject to lender approval. See website for details.
Meet Brian. He just got $5,000, and it was pretty easy. I'll tell you how in 10 seconds. Brian needed cash help. After being rejected by banks, he tried 27cash.com. Told them how much he needed, even let them know he had bad credit. In minutes, 27cash.com found a lender who deposited $5,000 into his bank account the very next day. If you need cash help, even if you have bad credit, go to 27cash.com. 27cash.com.
From the Pat Moody Studios, this is News Talk Sports 94.9. WSJM FM Benton Harbor, St. Joseph. Depend on us. WSJM News now. Team coverage from the WSJM Newsroom on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM.
It's 7:05. 55 degrees in Benton Harbor under clear skies right now. It's going to be a chilly start to the morning. It feels a little bit chillier only because of the breeze that's there. I'm Ken Lundberg. This is the WSJM Morning Show. We will start our interview in just a couple of minutes with State Representative Joey Andrews. We've got the full interview. It'll be on our Facebook and YouTube live stream. You can see the video live stream by going to your platform of choice, typing in WSJM and tuning in there. We'll also have good parts of it right here on the radio. And right now, we're going to go to the WSJM newsroom and take a look at what's happening there. Substantial spending cuts are coming to Bridgman Public Schools as a result of the tax settlement reached between AEP and Lake Township. In 2022, AEP started the process to dispute the assessed value of the Cook nuclear power plant as far as property taxes are concerned. The settlement places the plant at its 2022 value, about 12% less than what it is now. Speaking in Lake Township last night, Bridgman Public Schools Superintendent Shane Peters said this will mean a loss of about $1.2 million for the district, making it necessary to cut between $1.2 and $1.8 million by June 30th.
Staffing reductions will occur at all levels: administrators, teachers, support staff. But there'll also be some program reductions in athletics, curriculum, technology, and transportation.
Peters said at the heart of the issue is Bridgman's out-of-formula status, meaning because the community has such a large tax base, Bridgman is locked into a non-homestead millage rate of 8.4 mils. Most other districts can levy up to 18 mils. As a result, Peters said it's left with no options but to cut. Others affected by the Cook tax settlement include Bridgman, Lake Michigan College, Berrien RESA, and the Berrien County government. Updating a story we reported earlier this week, the Berrien County Sheriff's Department says the suspect arrested after crashing their vehicle into the Sailor's Pizza Port in Niles is identified as 21-year-old Jaquan Dion Chestnut from Chicago Heights, Illinois. He was arraigned yesterday on charges of fleeing and eluding, resisting and obstructing a police officer, and driving without a valid license. At last report, Chestnut was being held at the Berrien County Jail on $20,000 bond. There were earlier reports that the suspect vehicle Chestnut was driving was stolen, but that appears to not be the case. The sheriff's office says, however, it is a vehicle of interest in an unrelated crime that happened in Illinois. This week's events started when a deputy tried to stop Chestnut for speeding. After refusing to stop and a brief pursuit, Chestnut allegedly lost control of his vehicle and crashed into the Sailor's Pizza business in the 300 block of Lincoln Avenue, igniting a fire in the building and causing extensive damage. Only minor injuries for the driver were reported. According to a social media post from the mayor of Niles, the business owner is in the next steps planning stages as to what to do with the business. And finally, staff at the Cook nuclear power plant took part in an emergency drill this week on Tuesday, simulating a hostile attack on the facility. Plant spokesperson Bill Downey tells us they do these drills each quarter, sometimes with partners from the Berrien County Emergency Management Agency and sometimes with partners from the state. Downey says employees at Cook all have secondary roles to assume in the event of an emergency, and during the drills, they know what to do. The hostile action drill on Tuesday prepared staff for events like terrorist attacks. Downey says such exercises are part of Cook's job to protect the community.
With the kind of drilling that we do and the kind of partnerships we have and the high level of participation, we're a pretty safe county. We know what's happening, whether it's a weather-related event or whether it's a nuclear event, whether it's hostile action. Because of these drills and because of the procedures that we run, it's pretty safe to say that we're ready.
Downey says during emergency drills, his job as a plant spokesperson is to take on a media role informing the public. So he would head over to the Cook Emergency Center in Buchanan and set up a media area. He says Cook is required to stage such events on a regular basis, and they take them very seriously, as well they should. It's I mean, you got a nuclear plant here or there. You don't want dangerous stuff going on. 7:09, it is the WSJM Morning Show. Good morning. I'm Ken Lundberg, and our guest this morning in studio is State Representative Joey Andrews, and we'll start that full interview in just a moment. Let's just say a good morning, though, to State Representative Andrews. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great.
Good. You were in Lansing yesterday. What were you working on?
A whole host of things. The big reason we went back was to make some adjustments to the school aid budget.
Okay.
So we appropriated an extra $125 million into school safety and mental health funding. We heard from a lot of schools that the ongoing amount we had put in the budget in July wasn't enough. So we found some extra resources and we're ballooning that up. So a lot of our local schools here are going to get pretty big boosts in that end too.
Yeah, they were talking about, I see some of the political ads talking about teacher pensions. Is this part of that?
That was another thing that we did yesterday as well, was kind of codify the 6% and 3% pension reductions so that they don't have to fund excess into the pension fund anymore. We've restored it.
Okay.
So that money's going back into teachers and into school districts' pockets as well. So
okay. The money that you found for the legislation yesterday, you said $125 million?
That's right.
Where'd you find it?
I'm not on the appropriations
in the
committee,
couch.
but, yeah, couch cushions, back pocket.
Okay.
No, just as you go on through the year after doing a budget, there's some things that it turns out you had more money than you thought, or something that was getting funded that didn't need to get funded.
Okay.
And so a few of those things happened. There was some extra money. It's an $80 billion budget, so $125 million is not a small amount of money, but
Right.
there's a lot of money in the budget.
Yeah. If you don't spend it, you lose it. And in some cases, the projections for what you think you're going to spend, you don't spend that much.
Exactly.
And so you found this money.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's good news. That's good news. I bet the teachers are happy about that.
I hope so.
And the schools. All right. We'll talk more about this interview. It will start in just a moment right here on the WSJM Morning Show video live stream. So if you want to catch the full interview, just hop on over to our Facebook or YouTube page and tune in. We've got sports right now with Dave Wolf. Hooray for the Tigers. Are you a Tigers fan?
So my house are Cubs fans.
That's okay. That's all right. At least the Cubs are better than the White Sox.
That is 100% true.
So, Tigers are still looking for that wild card slot. They're 2 games ahead of the Minnesota Twins right now, and they will play an afternoon game today against the Tampa Bay Rays. It comes up at 1:10 as that's the first pitch. Dave Wolf has got sports, and we've got a whole lot more to talk about right here on the WSJM Morning Show.
Wednesday in Major League Baseball, Parker Meadows and Spencer Torkelson homered, and the Detroit Tigers strengthened their hold on a nail wildcard spot.
All right, so we're back on the video live stream. This is some of your exclusive content. We're going to start that interview with State Representative Joey Andrews. Once again, good morning, and thank you for joining us. We do appreciate you coming in, especially because you were in Lansing yesterday. And I have to tell you, so I don't know if you heard the interview earlier this week with your opponent in this race, Kevin Whiteford.
Sure.
Kevin and I got our wires crossed, and he showed up, I think roughly 20-25 minutes after he was supposed to be here. So I was tap dancing basically for the entire time. So listeners, thank you for hanging in there for that. But I will tell you, last night, I texted you and I said, all right, State Representative Joey Andrews, we're all good to go, right?
Yeah.
You're going to show up. And then I heard that you were in Lansing voting yesterday, and I thought, oh no, does he think it's going to be happening from Lansing?
No, I actually,
so thank you for showing up.
I commute back and forth from Lansing every time we're up there. I always figure the less time I spend in Lansing and the more time I spend in district, the better.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good thought. And if you're driving back and forth that frequently, how many rock chips do you have in your windshield?
Oh yeah, well that's.
Do you take your windshield bill to the governor and say, hey Gresham?
Yeah, there really should be like a auto maintenance budget. I will say I get to experience a lot of the roads getting fixed though. Oh my God, the amount of road work.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it's a good thing. It's so nice when they finally fix them. But we're here today because you are running for re-election for House District 38. And we want to talk to you a little bit about your background and your decision to get into politics, and describe your time in Lansing and what you've been doing there, and why you would like voters to vote for you again. But let's start at the beginning. Who is Joey Andrews? I see on your name in a couple of places on the web, you're Joey Andrews the fourth.
Yep, that's correct.
That's 4.
I know. Not a lot of creativity coming down here. But yeah, I grew up around here. My dad's family's from the Dowagiac area originally. Okay. My mom's from Decatur. And so, I lived in the Sister Lakes area until I was about 12. And then when I finished middle school, I went to a small elementary school in Niles, St. Mary's.
Okay.
And after I finished elementary school, we moved over to St. Joe. I started at Lake Michigan Catholic, went through middle high school there. I went to college, most of college career down in East Tennessee, a small liberal arts college down there, Carson Newman University, and then went to law school in Detroit at Wayne State. Graduated from law school, came back home for what I thought was going to be a short duration while I figured out what I was going to do. And then, wasn't long before I was like, God, it's just, this is just a great place to live, and just kind of fell in love with it all over again, and practiced law for a couple of years locally. But I think 2013, when I graduated law school, might have been the worst time in like the history of humanity to get a law degree.
Oh no!
Basically, during the recession, all the big firms had laid off, and the mid-tier firms had started. So there was this kind of downward mobilization of lawyers, and so all of us graduating with no experience were like really bottom of the totem pole.
Oh goodness!
But my family had been in small business for generations, and my parents were both, they were really struggling coming out of the recession. So I, took the opportunity to go and work with them, try to get the businesses cleaned up, back on their feet. Got to put a lot of what I had learned in law school to work on the business side of things.
Yeah.
Went into business myself for a few years. Me and some college friends started up a solar installation business. Mostly we were done by the recession kind of sent us all in different or not the recession, the pandemic kind of sent us in different directions, and we sort of tied that up then. I ran for office the first time in 2018. Locally here in the old, was then the 79th district.
Okay.
Didn't win, obviously. And really fell in love with organizing and the act of like working with people. It was just like really clicked for me. So I did another cycle of campaign work after that, worked for the Biden campaign in 2020 as their regional director here in Southwest Michigan. And then I went to work for the Michigan AFL-CIO, the Labor Federation, doing labor policy work for them, a little bit of organizing still as on the, kind of as a side, but really actually starting to do policy work again, reminded me how much I loved that and why I went to law school in the first place.
Yeah.
And then when this new district got drawn, I was excited to, take another crack at it. And this time we won.
Yeah. So how's it been? I mean, you're wrapping up your first term.
First term
in the state house. How has it been? What do you think?
Nothing could have prepared me for what it's actually like to be there. And I think that's pretty much what everybody who's ever done it tells you. I was going in, I talked to some of our previous representatives here, like, Al Pasholka and John Prost and others. And they were all like, basically you can't really tell you exactly what it's like till you're there. Right. And it's a wild experience, but fantastic. I mean, honor of a lifetime, really, to be able to do this work.
Yeah. When you say the experience is kind of wild, I mean, what kind of things are I imagine the information flow, there's a lot coming at you all at once.
Right. Yeah. And I always tell people this is sort of like the ideal job for somebody who loves to learn. I'm one of those people, right? If I could have just stayed in college and cost was no object, I probably could have done that. I love learning new things. And every day you're presented with something new, and even if it's not like a committee you're on or a field you're an expert in, you have to vote on everything. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying everybody does this, but the responsible thing to do is you got to learn about the stuff you're voting on.
Right.
So one day you might have somebody in your office and you're learning about some like niche health insurance thing, or, in my case, getting to learn a little bit about how like cable right-of-ways work on a bill that I ended up sponsoring earlier last year. And it's like, I never thought I'd ever learn about, some of, how that worked and that tax system and all that. But here we are,
Yeah, there's a new show coming up on CBS Nightly News called Cable Right-of-Ways.
It's fascinating stuff, riveting, I promise,
We're talking with State Representative Joey Andrews, 38th District, a Democrat. And if people look at Southwest Michigan, people not from this area look at Southwest Michigan and they look at some of the political makeup of who's here and how people typically vote, you would say this is a staunch Republican area. And yet you are a Democrat who I would say surprised a lot of people by winning that race.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Your opponent said, well, you came in on a blue wave.
Yeah.
But I mean, so is there, how has it been being among the top political officials here, not of the same party of pretty much everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the chunk of Southwest Michigan that we represent from Saugatuck to New Buffalo, I would say on average is a little more Democratic leaning.
Yeah.
The region itself more conservative once you get inland and everything. But, St. Joe, Benton Harbor, Bridgman, South Haven, like New Buffalo, Saugatuck, a lot of these communities are either very blue or
so it's
purple.
A Democrat district.
Yeah, I would say so. It leans our way, right?
Okay.
It leans our way. But, a lot of the elected officials here are Republicans too. But at the end of the day, like my focus is trying to, bring investment back to our local community, help us capitalize on opportunities. And I think whether you're Republican or Democrat, we all kind of see eye to eye on that.
Right.
So I've had great working relationships with Stevensville and Lincoln Township, which is one of my reddest municipalities. But a lot of the elected officials there, we get along great because we have similar vision and, in terms of building our community. And so, we don't talk about social issues all the time. We probably don't see eye to eye on some of that stuff. But I haven't had an issue really working with the locals because, like I said, we've got similar vision.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, especially with the makeup of the House and Senate right now, and the governor's mansion, you've got Democrats in control, and who better to have at the table looking for those resources than a state House Democrat?
Yeah, it's byproduct of how the political system works, right?
Yeah.
When you're in the party in power, you get more control on the resources, but I actually think I've been more successful even still. I mean, we got $300 million brought back to the district to restart Palisades.
Right.
As some of my colleagues remind me, it's more money than anybody else got. But I'm really proud of that. I mean,
they say you've had enough.
yeah. A few of them are like, share the wealth, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a zero-sum game. There's only so many dollars in the budget. And if I can get every single one of them back into, my district in Southwest Michigan, by God, I'm going to get every single one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with State Representative Joey Andrews. One of the things that people have talked about is for our economy here is data centers. You've been involved with some of the tax treatment proposals for data centers. Can you give us an update on where all that stands right now?
Yeah, so that was actually a big party yesterday too. So it's a 2-bill package. There's a sales tax and a use tax exemption. We've been we passed this bill through the House very easily last November, ran into a little hiccup in the Senate, but passed it there. And then shortly after that, all these environmental groups just came out like crazy fighting against this. And we've been kind of in a knockdown drag out for about 8 months, working on this, trying to get this legislation passed. So last night, we got one of the 2 bills across the finish line. Very, very narrowly didn't quite get the second one because of some games other Democrats were playing. I have to say the Republicans were pretty straight up with us yesterday. Some issues in my own party, but
what games were they playing?
Just refusing to vote. Just wouldn't go up on the board either way. And some of our
was it because of that particular issue, the substance?
Yeah, there is a divide over whether or not Michigan should allow these data centers to come. So, and it's, it was a bipartisan vote that passed the first bill yesterday. We had about 30 Republicans and roughly as many Democrats voting yes on the first bill. There's Republicans that don't like tax breaks in general. And then there's Democrats who either don't like tax breaks or are, siding with these environmental groups who don't like how much electricity they use and that they use a lot of water to cool them. Now, my argument is, we've got 2 nuclear plants near us, so no problems there. Power supply in Michigan's steady. And in case anybody, might not have noticed, we have tons of water.
Right.
And it's not like this pollutes water, right?
Right. It doesn't do anything to the water. The water is just a pass through to cool disperse the heat.
Yeah. And they're huge, huge taxpayers. So like any community you look around the country that's gotten these, it's been a massive boost to their school funding, local government funding. Our community here would benefit so much from being able to get these. And so, we had a few people who kind of decided to play activist and try to stop the process from moving. And Speaker decided, we passed one of the bills, almost certainly going to get this other one passed. So we're going to take it up on another date. But I'm real optimistic that we're going to get this across the finish line. Pretty much, this is one of those rare times where business groups and labor unions are both shaking hands and saying we want these things. I've actually been able to pull that off a couple times over the last year. As get those 2 groups that are often opposed to each other together on issues. It's just these environmental groups that have just kind of gone a little rogue on this one.
Yeah. So is one of the bills headed to the governor's desk?
In principle, the use tax exemption could go to the governor's desk at this point. The bills are tied together, so both need to pass in order for them to become law.
Got it.
But if the governor wanted to sign one now and then wait for the other one, she could, in theory, do that.
Okay. And the other one, you say it'll come up at a later date before the election?
Probably. I would say probably after the election at this point.
Any more session before the election happening?
Possibly in October.
Okay.
It's kind of up in the air right now. Election years, the session schedule always gets sparse.
Yeah.
Remembers 2022, it was pretty sparse then too.
Yeah.
But we always have dates on the books in case we need to take action. Main reason we were back yesterday was to do this extra school funding. So, if there's another need for us to jump back in and do some things, we'll do it.
Okay. Very good. Again, we're talking with State House Representative Joey Andrews. He's a Democrat from the House District, 38th House District. Lakeshore District? We call it the Lakeshore District?
Yeah,
I see your signs all over the place.
Yeah.
They said Lakeshore District. And it's like, well, Stevensville's over there. I'm in St. Joe.
I know. I've heard that a few times. They're like, oh, did you go to Lakeshore Schools? I'm like, no, it's the character of the district.
The war by the shore is happening tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So Lakeshore heavily favored to lose. Sorry about that. No. All right, we'll continue this interview in just a moment. We do want to do a quick check. Let's see, we've got Bloomberg News coming up in just a moment on the air. We'll go back for ABC News and then our local news from the WSJM newsroom. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. The forecast for today does call for partly sunny skies. It's going to be, partly to mostly sunny skies. Hopefully it's a repeat of yesterday afternoon. It was just gorgeous here yesterday. I don't know what it was like on the east side, but it was pretty here. High around 75 is expected today with some northeast winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight's forecast, partly cloudy, low around 57, and east winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then tomorrow we get back to that chance of rain, about a 20% chance of showers, mainly late in the day. Breezy conditions, high around 76, but northeast winds 15 to 20 miles per hour and gusts to 50. Speaking of the data centers, you talk about the electricity needs that those have, and it's enormous.
It is.
And I mean, it's a lot of computing power, and it requires a lot of electricity. We are fortunate enough to have the two nuclear power plants here, one of them operating, one of them about to operate. I mean, you're getting updates on Palisades. Everything look good there so far?
Yeah, it looks great. They're in a maintenance phase right now, which is, in my opinion, great, right? Like, we love maintaining nuclear plants. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
But everything we're hearing from the NRC and the DOE is, they were impressed with how well maintained the plant has been. They thought this was going to be a bigger lift than it turned out to be. And they've already brought on more than 200 workers up there. They're hiring a few hundred more.
Yeah.
It looks like all steam ahead, and all signs point to them being back on the grid end of next year, beginning of the following year. So.
Yeah. They and speaking of steam, they were talking about some steam generators there that may need some additional look, but they did that and they found that because of a proactive look at that, which again is what you want.
Exactly.
That's what you want. And is it surprising to you that Microsoft has decided to buy their own nuclear power plant?
It's a flex, right?
Yeah, right.
But one of the things I've been saying, and
what do they call that? Making the supply chain more vertical or whatever?
yeah, vertical integration. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of the reasons I'm such a huge proponent of nuclear energy is, we're talking about electrifying our whole economy in order to cut down on carbon emissions. And solar and wind, obviously a big part of that. But at the end of the day, you do the math, we're not going to get there without nuclear power, especially if we're trying to manufacture chips and batteries and do data centers. So I'm really hopeful that Palisades coming back online is going to really, set a benchmark going forward. We're going to start seeing growth in nuclear generation again.
Okay. All right. We'll continue this conversation in just a few moments right here on the WSJM Morning Show right after news.
Banks and Duke University found that some 30% of firms have postponed, scaled down, or canceled investment plans because of uncertainty around the election. That's up from 28% last quarter. Futures look strong this morning after a mixed close for Wall Street yesterday, as stocks pulled back from record highs. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
The Morning Show with Ken Lundberg on WSJM.
It is the WSJM Morning Show. Good morning. Thank you for joining us and being a part of it. We are having a ball with State Representative Joey Andrews. He's here to talk about his experiences in Lansing, his background, and why he wants your vote for his reelection bid. We talked with his opponent, Kevin Whiteford, earlier this week. We're talking with Joey Andrews today, and so we'll be continuing that interview in a few moments right after news. But again, you were in Lansing yesterday talking about some of the education proposals and how to shore up some of the money, basically the resources that are needed. But also, one of the things that we'll ask you about here in a few moments, if you don't mind, State Representative, is Bridgman and the Cook Nuclear Power Plant. They contested their property tax assessment, as everyone does from time to time.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, just off the cuff, I mean, is it what you expected, the deal that they came to, the local municipalities and Cook, as far as reducing it by about 12%?
Yeah, I actually think this was a pretty generous offer from Cook, given what other power plants have been able to reassess that. And like you said, people do this. When we were in business, you used to always joke that you had one assessor for when you needed to get your property taxes lowered and one assessor for when you needed to sell your business. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people do this, but I do have a lot of concern over what it's going to mean for Bridgman schools and for Lake Michigan College in particular. County can find some ways to make up deficits, but the schools are really constrained in how they can raise resources. And, Bridgman School is one of the best schools in the state. So, real shame to have them take a heavy hit. And so I'm hoping we can find some different ways to help them out.
Yeah, for the school superintendent yesterday to be talking about cuts in the magnitude of somewhere between $1.2 million and $1.8 million by June of next year, that's substantial.
It is. It's a huge cut. And I've had some conversations with folks over at AEP about, we understand, your corporation, your mission is to cut costs, make money, right? Get that. But, a lot of their employees have kids in that school system. And so, I think there is some amount of, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, right? Yeah. You're hurting your own employees if their school system is going to take a big hit.
Yeah. So we'll be talking more about that in just a few moments right here on the WSJM Morning Show. Again, this morning we are talking with State Representative Joey Andrews. He's running for re-election. We'll continue that interview in just a few moments. It's currently 54 degrees out in Benton Harbor under clear skies, 56 in St. Joseph, 55 in South Haven, and 53 degrees in Buchanan. We've got more news to talk about in just a moment. First, let's check in, see what's happening with ABC.
ABC News, I'm Sherry Preston. Sandbagging, boarding up homes, stocking up on water and non-perishable food. That's what folks who've decided to stick it out in Tallahassee, Florida, ahead of Hurricane Helene are doing. For those like Frank Pinky, however, who've decided to evacuate.
I hope when we come back, our house is still the same as it was, as we left it. But not really nervous. Just being cautious of what's going on around us.
The storm is expected to make landfall this evening, possibly as a Category 4 hurricane. History made in New York.
A federal grand jury handing up an indictment against New York Mayor Eric Adams, the first sitting mayor in the city's history to be charged with a crime. The charges remain sealed, but Adams is already calling them entirely false and proclaiming his innocence.
ABC senior investigative correspondent Eric Katursky here in Manhattan. The United States and its allies calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah as Israel threatens a ground invasion. This is ABC News.
WSJM News Now. Team coverage from the WSJM Newsroom on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM.
In the WSJM Newsroom, we've got some things we're following this morning. Good morning. I'm Ken Lundberg. It's the WSJM Morning Show. 54 degrees, and we're going to expect sunny skies to start the day here in Benton Harbor. Tonight's forecast, the high today is going to be 75. Tonight's forecast, partly cloudy, low of 57, east winds 5 to 10. Friday, mostly cloudy, 20% chance of showers, mainly late. Breezy with those northeast winds, 15 to 20 miles per hour, and gusts to 30. The high tomorrow is going to be around 76 degrees. Some of the news that we're following from the WSJM Newsroom this morning, as we've been talking about, substantial spending cuts are coming to Bridgman Public Schools as a result of the tax settlement reached this week between AEP and Lake Township. We'll tell you more about that coming up at 8 o'clock. We'll talk about it here with State Representative Joey Andrews as well. The settlement reached between Lake Township and American Electric Power will also affect several local governments in Berrien County and Berrien County government itself. Berrien County Administrator Brian Doucette said that the Board of Commissioners in November were looking at what a 30% reduction in property tax might mean, and they were thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 to $3.5 million. The final settlement only reduces the plant value by 12%. They're still going to have to deal with that. We'll talk about what they're thinking about here coming up in a few minutes. A Benton Harbor woman is dead after being struck by a vehicle on Napier Avenue in Benton Township. The Benton Township Police Department sent a statement late yesterday saying the accident happened Monday evening around 8:30 p.m. near Milton Avenue, which is right by the Walgreens. The 74-year-old woman was crossing the street when she was struck by a vehicle driven by a 68-year-old Benton Harbor man. We now have learned the identity of that man is Benton Harbor City Commissioner Ron Singleton. Police say he is cooperating with the investigation. And absentee ballots for the November 5th election will be mailed out to voters across Michigan today. Van Buren County Clerk Susie Rome tells us that in some jurisdictions, local clerks are reporting nearly half of voters are requesting absentee ballots. So make sure that if you're requesting the absentee ballot, you fill it out right, you sign it, sign the return envelope before you put it away, and make sure you get it in the mailbox on time. We'll talk about those stories and more coming up at 8 o'clock this morning. We've got the latest state news and then check on sports. Tigers still hot. Afternoon game today. First pitch 1:10. Dave Wolf is coming up with that full report in just a few moments.
The Michigan News Network.
I'm Beth Fisher, the UAW.
Do that. We were talking a moment ago about how you have to learn a lot about a lot when you're in whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or other when you're serving in state government or any level of government. You got to learn a lot about a lot.
Yes.
And I mean, how do you schedule your time? How do you budget your time to learn about the issues that are coming up, especially when they're coming so quickly and sometimes in an unscheduled fashion?
Yeah, well, I sleep very little as part of it.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It helps to have good staff. I've got great staff working for me. Anybody who's met my legislative director, Allison, knows she's brilliant. She's a policy person too. So, they spend a lot of time looking at what's coming up to help, get me prepared for some of the, faster votes that come across the desk. We do a lot of meetings. I spend a lot of time on Zoom or in meetings, learning from experts, who are working on these different policy issues. And, you got to hear both sides of every issue. So you have to make sure you're bringing in people who oppose, people who support, people who are, kind of neutral, right? And get all those different perspectives. And, you hope you're as informed as you can be when you vote. And, sometimes you're making people unhappy,
yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah. You're always making one side unhappy.
Yep. And that was a hard conversation I was having last night with a very good friend of mine in the legislature who really didn't want the data center bills to move. And I was like, look, I understand you don't like this and some people don't. And I was like, but there's those of us that really want this to happen. And I was like, sometimes you have to take hard votes. And, he was like, well, it shouldn't have to be that way. And I was like, you don't want to take hard votes, then don't run. Like this is the job.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it is.
Is that a Republican or a Democrat?
It's a Democrat.
Okay.
Democrat. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you think about it and communities can decide whether or not they want these things in here. It does have a larger impact when you're talking about environment and electricity demand and everything else. But, you think about the recreational marijuana, a lot of communities view their needs economically as, well, we can bring this in and it can benefit our community and it doesn't have the detriments that, that people said it would.
Absolutely. And every community that has a large investment like a power plant or a factory or something like that, those communities end up, they love those things because they employ people, they invest in the community, they donate to local causes. These are good things.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So maybe we should talk a little bit about, so you've spent nearly 2 years in the State House. What would you count among your accomplishments in that time?
Yeah. So obviously, Palisades, I think, is one of our the big things that I point to. It's first in the world project, getting a nuclear plant restarted and being able to secure $300 million to make that happen was not a small task. We had to do a lot of work. And as many people know, Democrats aren't universally in support of nuclear power.
Right.
So convincing, the majority to support this took a lot of work, and grateful to have the governor supporting us on that and, our federal partners. But that was definitely one of our big hard fought wins. Getting the school debt forgiven for Benton Harbor was a big one. That's something that, anybody who's spent time knocking doors in Benton Harbor, talking to people there, knows how core to the community's identity that school system is. And that debt was sort of an albatross around everybody's neck. It was like a badge of dishonor that the community wore, that their school system, had this debt put on them. And so, obviously it doesn't fix everything. Schools have a lot of challenges in front of them still, but being able to kind of wipe the slate clean for them and say, okay, now you guys got the runway you need to try to make this happen.
Yeah.
You know, that was something that I was really grateful that we were able to get across the finish line.
Yeah. Okay. So Palisades, Benton Harbor, other issues?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we had our the beginning of last year, the issues that we kind of call like the big 6 things that we first did. Those were all things that I always said if I could do one of those in my legislative career, I would have been proud of. And that was, repealing Michigan's right to work law, reinstating our prevailing wage, repealing the abortion ban that we had on the books for almost 100 years, expanding our Civil Rights Act so that the LGBTQ community was covered, and then repealing the pension tax and expanding the working families tax credit. Those were all, kind of core Democratic promises that we all made when we were running for office. And, that's always what I point to when I say, every politician makes promises, but we the minute we got majority for the first time in 40 years, we delivered on those promises right away.
Yeah. Do you think you'll keep the majority after November?
I think we got a good shot at it.
Yeah.
I'm a campaigns person. I'm a data nerd all the way. So, I mean, I always try to back my my claims with data. I think, probably a little better than a coin flip. There's a couple of seats on the east side that are going to be hard for us to keep, but there's also a few seats that I think we have good odds at picking up. So, I think if Harris does well in Michigan, we're outspending the Republicans in the House right now by like 3-1.
Yeah, her ads are everywhere.
Yeah,
Harris, so
Harris ads, our House ads are. I mean, my ads are up. Everybody on the east side, their ads are up. So we're doing the things that we need to do, and I think we've delivered on, what we need to deliver on to show people we deserve another round.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll continue this conversation in just a couple of seconds, right here on the WSJM Morning Show.
We dropped down to 57, and tomorrow breezy, becoming mostly cloudy. There's a slight chance of a shower as we head into Friday night, but high temperature still getting up in the mid-70s. I'm Chief Meteorologist Carrie Peugeot.
The Morning Show with Ken Lundberg on WSJM.
Oh my goodness, politics. It's a fun thing. Does politics make for strange bedfellows?
It certainly does. Yeah, I think you watch, national politics and you try to figure out, God, how'd that deal happen? Or why are they voting on this like that? And I used to think the same stuff. And then you're there and you're like, oh, like legitimately, I mean, you never know who's your friend and who's your enemy. Every day it can change based on what issue you're working on.
Sure.
I've found myself working very closely with Republicans on data centers, on nuclear energy. Methane digesters is another thing we took up that I've had a lot of,
I love a good methane digester.
Don't we all, but it is really interesting. It is really interesting.
I bet. We're talking with State Representative Joey Andrews from the 38th District. He's running for re-election, and we're just asking him about what he's been doing in Lansing himself and some other things that are topical right now, including the tipped wage situation. And this one seems to be going back and forth a little bit, but my understanding is you've been going around and talking to some of the servers to understand a little bit more about their position. What are you hearing out there, and what are your thoughts on the issue?
Yeah, so we've convened 3 meetings so far, and we have a 4th one coming up in South Haven soon. And we've met with restaurant owners and we've met with service staff in separate meetings because don't want the servers to have to talk when their bosses are there, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly, both groups have been pretty universally in agreement on what they'd like to see here. And so I think, broadly speaking, everybody knows like the minimum wage is going to have to go up, and nobody's really paying the minimum wage right now. So I think that's part of why it's so agreeable. The big issue is around the tip credit.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm hearing both from servers and from restaurant owners that the tip credit going away is going to be devastating for them.
Can you explain for those who don't know how that works?
Yeah. So there's a minimum wage and there's a tipped minimum wage, and the tipped minimum wage is a factor lower than the actual minimum wage. And the deal is, if you're working in a tipped wage paying job, if you make less than the actual minimum wage, your employer has to make up the difference. But if you make more than the minimum wage, then they're allowed to be credited the difference between the tipped wage and the minimum wage. And so with
the thought being that one way or another, you're going to get the minimum wage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One way or another, you're either getting it through tips or you're getting paid it by your employer.
Right.
And now in our restaurants locally, a lot of our servers are making north of $50 an hour in some cases.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of the stories I was hearing from them, I was like, I might be in the wrong industry. You guys are doing pretty well.
And so their point is, we don't want the tipped wage to go away.
Right.
Because then people will stop tipping.
And so, the case I've been trying to make, talking to our leadership and others is, I'm a workers' rights guy, right? I came from the labor movement, very, very pro-labor, pro-worker, but that means, you listen to the workers, right? And so I'm like, if the workers are telling us that this isn't what they want, and the employers are telling us this isn't what they want, then who exactly is this for?
Right.
And that's what I'm struggling with on this, So I'm hopeful we're going to be able to get a compromise done here that'll hopefully involve restoring the tip credit. We got some work to do on the paid sick leave, but again, I think everybody acknowledges there's going to be a paid sick policy going forward. We just need to figure out how to make it work for everybody. There's a lot of, I think, bad incentives built into the original language. So I'm hopeful we'll see the minimum wage go up, maybe even a little faster than it is. The sick leave policy tweaked and fixed. Restore the tip credit, and maybe we can do some paid family leave alongside this. Do the whole thing together. Right. I think there's a lot of ways that, this could get split, but that's what I've been advocating for with our leadership and those in Lansing, is that I think we got to restore the tip credit.
Yeah, tell me if I'm wrong, but the more things that you add into a piece of legislation, the less likely it is to pass. So how are you going to split this one?
Yeah, I actually think sometimes it's the opposite.
Really?
Because you're trying
to make
bring
everyone happy.
You're trying to bring different interest groups together, right?
Okay.
And this is interesting because this is often one of those things that I think is when you're looking at it as a lay person, you think, oh, this doesn't make any sense. But when you get there, you're like, oh, this is how you get things done.
Yeah.
People look at like things getting attached and they're like, oh, pork barrel spending, that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, a lot of this is like, how do you make deals with people who maybe don't care enough about an issue to vote either way, or, maybe you're opposed but could get there if you can, address a different concern they have.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I think a compromise is going to be needed here, because there's certainly Democrats that think we should get rid of the tip credit. But maybe they don't care so strongly about getting rid of the tip credit that they're not willing to vote to restore it if, the minimum wage is increased faster or something is done
family
on family
leave or something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. We're talking with State Representative Joey Andrews about his activities in Lansing and some of the things that he's bringing back home here. Talking about if you are reelected and you go back for another term in the State House, what do you want to do?
Yeah, so a few things. I was talking a little bit earlier about all this. I've been learning a lot about AI and what's coming down the road, and the tech and knowledge space.
Skynet. Yeah, Skynet, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator 2.
Terminator 3.
Terminator 3 or 4, 5, 6.
So as I've been learning more about that, that's something I really want to start digging into, because I think, this is moving really quickly, right? Like technology is evolving really fast. Yeah. And my takeaway from a lot of the learning that I've been doing on this is that, I was explaining this to my wife, actually. So we have almost a 2-year-old daughter, right?
Nice.
And I was like, technology's always progressed over history, right? Like, and it always moves, pretty quick. But by and large, the advancements in technology haven't fundamentally changed the way people interact with the world. Maybe the internet or, the printing press being, some of the closest things to really changing the way humans interact.
Yep.
But what we're seeing coming with AI now, I think, is really going to fundamentally change the way we interact with the world. And it's definitely going to be a difference in how my daughter learns to interact with the world. And so I think, we've got to be proactive on figuring out, how do we regulate this? How do we set ourselves up for success? I think there's a lot of opportunity in state government for this technology to create some efficiencies. There's a lot of opportunity for businesses, but we've got to protect workers at the same time. So that's something I really want to dig into. Energy policy, obviously something I'm, really been involved with in my time so far. We're hoping to keep working on expanding, nuclear energy in Michigan. Want to make us a leader in that technology going forward. And then, of course, things like paid family leave and, some of these workers' rights issues that we still have a lot of work to do on is always something I spend a lot of my time on.
Okay. So you mentioned AI, energy policy, the other things that you're talking about. What do you see as some of the challenges that you'd like to see done differently in Lansing, whether Democrats retain control or whether Republicans take control of the House?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, and this is one of those inside baseball type things, but process has been a real challenge over the last year and a half. there's no playbook for governing, as it turns out. And when you take control from the other party, they don't exactly sit down and teach you how to do it.
No,
right? Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've had challenges, growing pains in majority. House, Senate, kind of learning how to do this the right way, how to work together as a party and get through our differences and that sort of thing. I do think we've made a lot of progress, and I think a lot of us have learned. I know. The year and a half I've been there, the amount that I've learned and the amount my perspective has changed has been, enormous from when I got there and how I thought things would work. And so that's one of mine is I really hope that the process gets a little bit better. I think it will, but you know.
Are there enough disclosures about what lawmakers are the full picture of lawmakers, the ethics disclosures and the financial disclosures and everything else?
I don't think there's enough. No. We actually, there was a big fight about this. You probably remember from, earlier in the session when we were enabling the ethics reforms that we did.
Yes.
And I was part of a group that was really pushing us to do better. Ultimately we didn't succeed in that push, but I really do think that that's something that's got to get fixed. Lobbying's part of politics, right? Like, lobbyists have expertise. They represent clients. They're coming to us with information that's valuable.
Absolutely.
But the public needs to know when we're being, taken out to dinner. They need to know if we're being, sent on a flight somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like that stuff's got to be public.
Yeah.
And right now, the way things are in Michigan, the transparency just isn't there.
Yeah.
And, we've got a former Speaker of the House who's under indictment for, like the most corrupt things imaginable, basically.
Right.
He ain't the only one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we got a lot more to do there. And I will say our ethics chair, Aaron Burns in the House, has been a huge champion on this. She's been fighting Democrats and Republicans alike, trying to get these transparency reforms done.
I bet she's popular.
Well, that's the thing, right? There's a whole lot of people up there that are like, and on our side, I always say this is not a partisan issue.
Right.
Corruption cuts both ways.
Absolutely.
You got a lot of Democrats who spend a lot of time in the minority, and their mindset is, now I'm going to get mine, right? And I think that's something we gotta cut off at the pass.
Yeah, keep working on that because sunshine cleanses all. I mean, that transparency is
Absolutely.
key to good government. All right, at 7:51, we're talking with State Representative Joey Andrews. We'll continue the WSJM Morning Show in just a moment.
Everyone has a favorite t-shirt, and you cherish the memories you have wearing that t-shirt. Wes, Debbie, and the team at Laser Graphics have made a lot of those.
That's always fun. I see somebody that they would come in and be like, look at my t-shirt from 25 years ago, and I still wear it, and it's still holding up.
I did that t-shirt.
It's actually really fun to walk around town and see the shirts that you made all over the community and different people wearing them. We made a lot of friends.
We have made a lot of great friends.
All right, back on the video live stream, the exclusive content today. I heard a rumor. No, I didn't hear a rumor. I know this too. So you have a sister.
Yes, I do. I have a younger sister.
And she's running for office.
Yeah.
Did you encourage her to run for office?
A little bit.
Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so my sister lives in Lincoln Township, and after the filing deadline this year, we noticed that nobody had signed up to run for clerk because the existing clerk is running for county clerk.
And nobody had signed up.
Nobody. It was just an open
no
seat.
Republican, no Democrat, no independent, nothing.
Yeah, and we were kind of sitting there looking at this, and I was like, somebody's got to run for this seat, right? And I mean, of course, the board can appoint if nobody runs, but that's like really not democracy.
Right.
So
right.
I was talking to my sister, and she ran my campaign in 2022, and I was like, you could run for this, and she's like, I don't want to run for office. I've never wanted to be an elected official. And I was like, I know, but I mean, we need good people, and clerks especially right now.
Yeah.
Clerks are under attack left and right.
Yeah.
So she decided to, run a write-in campaign, and she was successful. She got herself on the ballot. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on who you are, the Republicans did the same. And she knows it's an uphill battle. She knows she's probably not going to win, but at this point, I was excited to see her run. And I was like, she's like, I'm never doing this again. And I was like, we'll see.
So now she gets to experience a little bit about what you get to experience every time you put your name on the ballot.
Yep. My grandfather was on the school board in Dowagiac. He ran for that a few times. And so I think there's a little bit of a bug in the family, maybe.
Okay.
So
all right.
She got caught too.
Like the Kennedys, huh?
Hopefully not.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll continue this conversation with the Moody on the Market update in just a moment, right here on WSJM.
An auto owner's insurance agency in St. Joseph and in Niles.
We're watching over you. IMS Insurance Management.
Management Service.
IMS is proud to partner with Auto Owners Insurance.
From the Pat Moody Studios, this is News Talk Sports 94.9. WSJM FM Benton Harbor, St. Joseph. Depend on us. The Morning Show with Ken and Friends on 94.9 WSJM.
We've been having a really good conversation with State Representative Joey Andrews. He's running for re-election. Let's do this as part of our Moody on the Market update, which is brought to you by Insurance Management Service. Call IMS today, your local auto owners insurance agency in St. Joseph and in Niles. One of the things that we like to do with the Moody on the Market update is bring you interesting people you should know. And since you're running for re-election, State Representative Joey Andrews, tell us a little bit. This is your opportunity to make your pitch. Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think over the last year, one of the things that I've really found is that our community has just been, over the long run, not well represented in Lansing. And, one of the first things I found when I got there was a lot of the state agencies just didn't know what our local economy was like. They didn't know how much manufacturing we had here, the sort of assets that we had. So, of course, a lot of attention was being given to Grand Rapids and, Lansing and Detroit. I think, we've been able to bring a lot of investment back and kind of start some balls rolling. But, the reason I did this in the first place and the reason I want to continue working on it is because I believe in the inherent potential of our communities here. And I think a lot of that potential has really been wasted. Berrien County is one of the few counties in Southwest and West Michigan where the population is declining instead of growing. And yet we get millions of tourists a year that come through our area. So obviously people want to be here. Our question needs to be, how do we keep them here? How do we, continue growing our community or, start regrowing our community? And so I'm excited to dig in on more of those issues, right? Like, how do we bring more economic development? How do we address our housing crisis locally? Issues around short-term rentals, zoning, those sorts of things. And it's a long-term project. This isn't something that anybody can solve in 2, 4, 6, maybe even 10 years. But it is something that I'm really committed to working on and, working with our local elected officials here, our county officials, and our state agencies. I think, things are really starting to come together. And I'm hopeful that if, the community keeps sending me back, aside from, big legislation and all that stuff, the thing that I'm most focused on is continuing to push that ball forward. And if the folks here in the district will trust me with another few terms, up to my limit of 12 years, hopefully, that's what I hope to really accomplish in the long term is starting to grow our populations here, bring that investment and economic development, and make our region what I think it really can be. Really bring that potential out.
Okay. All right, State Representative Joey Andrews. And if you want to know more information, what's your website?
Joeyformichigan.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. I don't have an Instagram. I'm not that cool. So
you got to put the Instagram reels up. No,
I know. My younger colleagues are all like, "Why don't you have a TikTok?" And I'm like, "Oh,
oh goodness, oh goodness." You ever think about running for a higher office?
Not really. I mean, I'm always a person who says you don't say no to opportunity, right? I ran for this because I saw an opportunity to do something. And if I felt like running for higher office would mean that I could further the mission that, I feel like I'm called to do here, I would give it a thought. But I will say the way that I like to put this is there's people who run for office to be something, and there's people who run for office to do something. I ran to do something. And if at any time I felt like being in this role wasn't servicing my ability to do what I'm trying to do, I wouldn't do it anymore. I would find it the avenue I needed to be in. And so, I'm not the type of person that's going to run for higher office just because I want to like be a congressman or be a senator or something. I want to be where I'm going to do the most good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the interview today.
Thank you.
Thank you. State Representative Joey Andrews. And if you missed any part of that interview, we've got the full thing archived. It's on our Facebook page. You just go to Facebook and type in WSJM, and you can see the full video interview there. We also have his opponent for this race, Kevin Whiteford. That video interview is there as well. It's 7:59, and we have ABC News coming up in just a moment. First, the weather forecast. Mostly sunny skies are expected today. High around 75 degrees, northeast winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight's forecast, it's going to be partly cloudy. A low around 57, east winds 5 to 10 miles per hour. The good news is today we don't expect rain. The bad news is tomorrow we expect rain. Tomorrow, it's going to be mostly cloudy tomorrow. Only a 20% chance of showers, mainly late in the day. So you should have a good part of Friday without that rain. It's going to be breezy, though. A high around 76 degrees and 15 to 20 mile per hour winds out of the northeast, gusts up to 30. The weekend forecast, partly sunny, a chance of showers, low around 62 both nights, and highs around 75 degrees both Saturday and Sunday. Monday's forecast, partly sunny, a 30% chance of showers, high around 75. Tuesday, partly sunny. Wednesday, mostly sunny, but the highs are only going to be around 68 degrees. The Tigers are HOT hot. The Detroit Tigers beat the Tampa Bay Rays yesterday 7-1, continuing their winning streak. We'll talk more about that with sports and our sports director, Dave Wolf, in just a few moments right here on WSJM. Our WSJM News is coming up next right after ABC. It's 8 o'clock.
From ABC News.
And thanks to those of you watching on the video live stream. Any parting comments, State Representative? How was this hour?
This was a lot of fun. I do it again. If you ever need to fill an hour and you want to have me back,
Absolutely. I love to fill air. So, yeah, no. And the coffee?
Coffee was great.
Okay.
Which you can't say about every place. You guys don't skim.
we bring the little pods. They're probably not environmentally friendly, but we do it anyway. So we'll think about that later. It's 8 o'clock, and thank you for joining us on the video live stream today. Thank you for joining us for this interview, and we look forward to talking with you again.